Welcome to the latest episode of Open Mind, MQ's podcast. And on this week's episode, Craig and I are delighted to welcome Tommy Lowther. And Tommy is Chief Executive Officer of the sports charity Sporting Force. So welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today, Tommy.
Good morning, gents.
Welcome in.
And so we're just really going to have a conversation. I've read some of your backstory, Tommy, and it's pretty horrific in parts. But what's remarkable is the journey you've been on. So maybe to start the podcast, before we get into the sort of nitty-gritty of your research priorities and what you think might be important for us as a mental health research charity, can you tell us a bit about your journey, which sort of brought you to the sort of interest and really confronting your own mental health challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it started realistically for me at a very, very young age. I was born in Dundee, up in Scotland. And so my father was very, very abusive, very, very abusive. He used to beat up my mother constantly. I was only young then. He used to sort of hit me, my brothers and my sisters. And, you know, I kind of sort of from quite an early age had to then jump in and sort of make sure that his attention would come to me as opposed to my siblings. So like I say, so I'd do something wrong in order for him to sort of come at me. And then, you know, it kind of sort of over time, we ended up moving to England. And then I seen an advert. Well, actually, I went to an agricultural show, actually. And we seen a bunch of guys, you know, there with the military, and, you know, they were there with the stands, and you could have a go on, you know, the paintball rifles and stuff that they had. And just ever since that day, that was it. I was hooked. All I wanted to do was be in the military. I was that kid running around the playground, you know, with the stick and pretending it was a gun and everything like that. So at the age of 16, I joined the Army Foundation College at Harrogate, and went into junior leaders. So I did really, really well. And then eventually I went on to my regiment. So I joined the infantry. Now when I was with my regiment, we went out to Northern Ireland for the marching season. So you know, for those that are sort of not sure about it, you've got the Catholics and the Protestants, and they want to march through each other's area, and you know it doesn't really go down well, just to sort of put it in you know, fine detail really. And our job on this particular day was to stop the Catholics and the Protestants from getting each other and having a mass riot. So obviously we stand in the middle of them, and so we've got soldiers facing the Catholics and we've got soldiers facing the Protestants, and obviously we're in the middle. And being 18, I was just brand newly 18. You know, I just sort of turned 18. You know, literally a couple of months before. You know, and obviously, you know, when you join the military, they make you think that you're invincible. They, you know, they give you this persona that you take on, that, you know, that nothing will ever harm you or So at 18 year old, I'm thinking, right, that's it. You know, I'm going to conquer the world here. I'm going to stand in that baseline against all these rioting Northern Irish sort of but these people, and and that arrogance very, very quickly turned to fear.
Yeah,
I've never felt hostility like it. I've never experienced anything so hostile in my life. So there was petrol bombs coming over. At one point, you know, I got set on fire, and it was just, and the guy next to me, so you've got 6 foot shields, and the guy next to me, he sort of locked in his 6 foot shield, and so what they're called armadillos, and they lock into each other. Unfortunately, the guy next to me hadn't quite locked in properly, and we got pulled into the crowd. Now obviously I had my helmet on with me visor on, but essentially we got I've never had a hiding like it in my life. They broke all my cheekbone where I'd been stamped on. I was sort of bruised and battered, and then my face was all burnt from the like all of my eyebrows and down my nose and stuff was all burnt from, you know, from the petrol bombs. And it was just the most horrific thing. I've never experienced anything like it. And I think, you know, the way that I always describe it, Rory, is I was kind of a boy in a man's world. That's what it felt like, and that's kind of the only way that I can really describe it. Eventually, you know, we come away, and we come back to sort of the mainland UK.
Well, hold on a second. Just stop you there for a second, Tommy. Just So what is this? Is this the early 1990s? Then is it?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. No, because I mean,
Oh no, sorry, no, late 90s. Sorry,
late 90s. So I was probably maybe still just about living in Northern Ireland then. But I just remember, I remember the atmospheres obviously over those many summers in the 90s of the contentious issues of the marching season. So really, my heart goes out to you. Really difficult time. But just curious, and so before you got back to obviously to GB, did you get support though? So you're obviously injured. So what support did you get when you on that day or that night or whatever?
I mean, even going back just that, it's not that long ago. Realistically, it's not that long ago. And the world was even then a different place to what it is now. Mental health certainly wasn't at the forefront. So it wasn't really something that was such a big issue. It was kind of, we were there to do a job, and that kind of, and just so happened that you got injured a little bit while, well, I say a little bit, we got injured while we were there. So it's no, not really sort of any support. You have a debrief afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's essentially, right, is everyone okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it was that was kind of it really. And that was kind of it. There wasn't sort of any, any of the sort of the touchy-feely stuff that you might do now, where you sit down and, right, okay, look, that was actually quite a traumatic thing, and and how are you about it? So it wasn't really like that as such.
I mean, especially when you're so young, because I think I understand both of you and I have children are at the same age and who are about that age. Now, my daughter's 18. Your son thinks she's about to turn, or soon will turn 18.
Yeah.
And both of us know. I mean, that they're still, well, in your head, they're still children. It's like putting a young person in that such a dangerous situation. It's just incredible.
And I think that was that now, when I reflect now, I look at that and I think, I couldn't imagine our Daniel at that age being strapped with a rifle, a 6-foot shield. Well, not the rifle when you're in the rides, but but like having to sort of go into, and it felt like a war situation. It genuinely felt like, okay, we didn't have our rifles strapped to us or anything like that, but the hostility was just unbelievable. And I could never imagine.
I know.
Daniel being in that scenario at the age of he is now, like I say, and the age that he is now was the age that I was sort of preparing to go to Northern Ireland. So we were going to sort of Lidenhide to do all like the the training and stuff like that. And I think back and I just think, like, it was just phenomenal, that someone was sort of put in that position. But again, I wasn't the only young one that was there. There was a number of us, and when we were in that, it's called the baseline. So you've got like a big it's like a crowd control obstacle, it's called. So do you know, like the metal containers, like what the council keep all the stuff in? So there's one of them, and that's filled with concrete. Then you've got 4 soldiers, an armored vehicle, another 4 soldiers, and another crowd control obstacle the other side, and that's called the baseline. So so when we were in the baseline, I was stood right next to the crowd control obstacle, so I was sort of leaning against that. I'd hold my 6-foot shield and my baton. And I thought it was really good of the blokes to say, oh, Tommy, you can go right next to the CCO, the crowd control obstacle. And I know why now, because obviously with it being metal, that's where they aim with the petrol bombs. So, to smash the glass. So like I say, so the petrol bombs were coming over, hitting these, these containers. And obviously you're then doused in petrol and you were up in flames. And then, you've got sort of allocated men who are behind, who are firemen, who come and then, with fire extinguishing and they put you out. Now you're trained to just ignore the fact that you're ablaze, and again, and I think now it's sort of 18-year-old, it's just, it was a lot to go through. And again, there's some 18-year-olds who have been through it and they come out and they were absolutely buzzing about it, and it's the best thing they've ever experienced. And it was an experience, and it's one that I'll never forget. But I just don't think it's stood me in very good stead for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So then moving in ahead then, Tommy, then. So you came back from Northern Ireland back to north of England, and then did you continue to serve in the army, or?
Yes.
I know you obviously then moved into the Metropolitan Police as well.
No, so so I continued to serve, and then we went out into went up to Gibraltar, to go and do an exercise out in Gibraltar. I was on a night out with the lads. We were in the bar, and my the lads had sort of said, right, look, we're going back. I was talking to some girl there, you know, at the bar, and so the lads went. I was talking to this girl, and then these three guys come over, and they said something to the girl, like they sort of, you know, almost whispered it. And I didn't catch what it was that they said. I didn't hear what they said. Then all of a sudden, she quickly got up and left. I thought, right, okay, that's bizarre. They never said anything to me, and I never said anything to them. And I thought, right, okay, well, that's fine. So I just sort of got myself up, and started making my way back to camp. On the way back to camp, so you have to go sort of through the Gibraltar Rock. There's like an archway through the Gibraltar Rock, and to get back to camp. And I was walking through there, and I heard these footsteps behind me, and then I heard them walking, and then I heard them running. You know, you see it on, you know, you see it on films and stuff. You know, where someone's being followed through a dark alley and everything. And it was essentially, that's exactly what it was. And I was subsequently, I felt a punch to the back of the head. I went down, and then I was raped by these three guys. Taking what happened to me in Northern Ireland, taking sort of, you know, the scenario in Northern Ireland. Well, that was a walk in the park compared to this. And again, when I go back to that arrogance, and I go back to that, you know, that conditioning that the military do, and they make you think that you're invincible, and no one's ever going to hurt Tommy Lowther. No one will ever break me down, because I'm this, you know, I'm this universal soldier, you know, who can't be harmed. Now in mental health, you know, we talk about the fight, flight, or freeze, you know, which is obviously our natural reaction to, you know, to different scenarios. And I always thought mine would be fight, and it always has been fight, and it always has been ever since. Apart from that one evening, and I completely froze. I had nothing in me to sort of to be able to get away from that scenario. I couldn't fight them off. I couldn't run. I couldn't talk. I couldn't shout. I was just completely you know, consumed by this scenario.
Sounds awful.
Yeah, and I think the thing that got me most was the embarrassment of it. I think, you know, and the fact that, you know, that I'm an infantry soldier. This sort of stuff shouldn't be happening to, you know, to people like me. So yeah, so that sort of brought me down to earth very, very quickly.
So that, I mean, that's just awful, Tommy. So, so did you tell anybody in the aftermath? No,
definitely not. The problem. No, I didn't say anything, not at first. And it was just something that I was supposed to be on parade the next day, for the regimental photo, or for the company photo, and I didn't turn up. So I've got this photo now, and obviously I'm not on it, but yeah, I didn't turn up, and then over the coming, well, certainly while we were out there, I just drank, and I was just drinking all the time. We got back to the UK, and again I was just drinking, and I was fighting, and I was just in. And I was always really smartly presented, you know, like, you know, I mean, obviously we know that, you know, with soldiers, you know, a lot of the time, you know, that we know about they have to press everything, and they've got to look impeccable all the time, and and that's exactly how I was. But over the coming sort of months, I started going downhill. Completely just went downhill. I wasn't bothered about my kit. I wasn't bothered about turning up for parade. I wasn't bothered. I didn't care about anything. All I wanted to do was just go out and just drink.
And did any of your commanding officers, your colleagues, did anybody notice anything? Or
yeah, well, after a few months, it sort of got to the point where, you know, they were like, look, what's going on with you, Tommy? You know, what on earth's making you sort of act like this? Now, one of the things that, you know, that I deliver mental health courses now, you know, and I go around speaking about this stuff all the time, and you know, one of the messages that constantly gets sort of conveyed is to talk. You know, you need to talk, and you need to talk. The problem was that when I did talk about it in this particular, and that's right, by the way, that I'm absolutely, you know, about the talking and stuff is absolutely right. The only problem was in this scenario, when I did talk, it cost me my career, because when I eventually ended up telling my superiors, and it just, it lost me my career, basically. They didn't know how to deal with it. they didn't want to know how to deal with it. They had no intentions of trying to help with that. It was easier just to get me out of the regiment. Now, I was told that that I had to go and see the medical officer, just to sort of prove that this had happened, and like I say, those sort of tests are not pleasant. They're not pleasant, and actually, it was almost as embarrassing as the fact that this had happened to me. To go and sort of have to do these tests, and then eventually, anyway, I was sort of back and forward to see the commanders, and and at that point, there was me, the medical officer, my regimental sergeant, my company sergeant major, and the commanding officer who knew about it. So there was only sort of the four of us. And then when I went back,
but no psychological or mental health support at all.
No, not at that point, not at that point. And then sorry,
No, take your time, Tom. Take your
no,
time.
I'm fine. It's just I'd always wanted to be a soldier. This is all I ever wanted from being sort of 7-8-year-old. This was my dream. This is what I always wanted to do. And because of an act that was nothing to do with me, it wasn't my fault. I was just, I completely lost it all. I lost it all. And it, and it so sorry, I was just.
You're also sorry, Tom, because you're also so young as well still. I mean, because what age are you now? This stage?
I'm 40 now.
You're 40 now, so this, obviously still incredibly affecting all these years later. But what age were you when you had to leave the army?
I think I was sort of 20.
So a couple of years in then, just.
Yeah. On that, so I only did 3 years. I say I did 3 years. I was discharged out. Sort of close to the 3-year mark. And when I was discharged, it was kind of, I had to sort of quickly get over it because I was so young, and I couldn't, I certainly wasn't able to retire, but there was no sort of, there's no sort of golden handshake, so to speak, as I left. There was none of that. But the other thing I was, I was quite a sort of a talented football player. And once the military, well, actually, sorry, I'll come back to that. When I was discharged from the military, I was told that the lads were gunning for me. That because the rumor was that I was gay, because of what happened to me, and it wasn't safe for me to return, to return to the military. So eventually I got a letter through the post just saying, from the date that you received this letter, you're no longer in the military. This will be the discharge date. So and that was the end of that. That was kind of sort of the end of that, really.
So hold on, just so I'm clear. So literally, there was no support provided at all at that stage from the military at all, either in terms of the trauma you'd experienced, or B, the transition back to civilian life. There was nothing at all.
And this was told to other people.
Yeah, because at that point, I was told that there was only the four of us that knew. And then on the final meeting when I was up there, that I certainly hadn't told anyone. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed about it, so I certainly hadn't told any of the lads. And then I was told, that the lads were shit. The lads were gunning for me, and that because I was gay, and that I'd sort of slept in the same room as these people and whatever else, and well, then fast forward. I come out of the military, and I say fast forward. We'll rewind from now. About sort of 5 or 6 years ago now. I had a car, and I was buying some wheels off Facebook Marketplace. And I turned up to this house to go and buy these wheels, and one of the guys I served with answered the door. It was the biggest shock, and I've never felt so anxious in all my life. I literally nearly turned around and run, and the guy said, "Tommy," I said, "Yeah." He said, "What the hell ever happened to you?" He said, "Where did you ever go?" And I was like, "Well, I was I was completely sort of, I
Yeah.
didn't know what to say. And he was like, "Oh, we just got told that you moved regiment." I was like, "No, I got discharged out," and he knows the story now. But
So they didn't know. So you were told that they were gunning for you, but
yeah,
that wasn't true.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. And like I say, and I've just put the military to the back of my mind. And actually, a lot of the lads that I serve with now have added me, on social media and stuff like that. And I do sort of speak to them. And but yeah, it wasn't. It's a time of life. I learned a lot from the military. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was things that I did wrong. There was things that that I could have sort of, or decisions and choices that I could have made that would have been better. Nothing sort of, nothing sort of, detrimental to my career or anything like that. But being young and daft and and silly mistakes and stuff. But I certainly didn't deserve. Now I can say this. I certainly didn't deserve to be discharged from the military in the way that I was.
yeah.
Oh,
With no support as well. I mean, it's just incredible. So then, Tommy, so tell us a bit about obviously the mental health impact that obviously both of those, well, three sort of distinct things. Obviously, you talked at the start about obviously the abuse you witnessed and experienced at the hands of your father, then obviously Northern Ireland, and then obviously obviously the discharge from the army. It's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to deal with. So, what were the impacts on your mental health and
well, at that point, do you know what? At that point, Rory, people were wary of me. People were sort of, because of the fighting and because of that way that I was coming across, people were wary of me. And I had this weird feeling that it was respect. I thought people respected me because I was Tommy Lowther and I was big and I was hard and all the rest of it. And it was nothing. It wasn't respect. It was complete fear. It was complete fear, and it was complete sort of didn't want to approach me because of the unknown of how I was going to react. And I just generally thought that I had completely the wrong outlook on what respect was, and it's because I think it's because I put this barrier up of I didn't want anyone else to be able to hurt me. My dad had done it when I was younger. It would happen to me in Northern Ireland. It happened to me in Gibraltar, and it happened to me while I was getting out of the military. I thought I can't have this anymore. I've got to start looking after myself.
Yeah, but Tommy, your story highlights. I mean, so often when you see that acting out of aggression, it's because there's stuff that we can't. I mean, we don't know or see, and there's always some backstory. And I think that's what that illustrates. Is
and the problem is though that other people can't see that by your acts of aggression.
Yeah.
So to be honest with you, I didn't really understand that there was anything wrong with me mentally.
Right.
I never ever considered there was anything mentally wrong. I mean, to be honest, with mental health, I had quite a Neanderthal approach to it before I had my breakdown, because I used to think, well, it's not even real. It's not a thing.
So then, thinking then about, you described it as your breakdown. So tell us what happened there then.
Well, I was in the Metropolitan. I come away from the military, joined the. Well, I actually went down to London with my well, she's my wife now. She was my girlfriend then, but we moved down to London, and I started playing semi-pro football down there. And I took a really, really bad knock and couldn't play anymore. And then I thought, right, well, do you know what? That the football's out the window now as well. So I'm gonna join. I seen an advert to join the Metropolitan Police. So I joined the Metropolitan Police, and the one, I'm not going to go through the whole career, but the one thing in particular that really got me, and it still gets me now, is it was around Christmas time, and there was a family walking back from a Christmas party. There was mum, dad, little girl, and brother, and two lads had stolen a car, and they'd come round the corner, they'd skittled into the family, sent the family flying, like they sent them, sort of hit them. So there was like a drop, probably sort of maybe like a 4-foot drop off from where the road was down into this sort of this estate, and it skittled into this family and knocked the whole family sort of flying. But the car had landed on the little girl, and I think she was only like 4 or 5. So we got there was a call come across the radio for there's been an RTA, so a road traffic accident, at the Pembury estate. Is there anyone available to attend? So I said, yeah, golf down from 102. We're right next to the scene. We can pop round. Just thinking, there was going to be a couple of people that had a bit of they'd had a bit of a bump. They were refusing to sort of exchange details or whatever. So that's what we were expecting. And when we turned up, there was people everywhere. There was people screaming. The car was still on top of the little girl.
Oh.
So we had to get her out. So obviously, I sent the guy that I was with. I sent him to go and check on the family, and I was giving CPR to this little girl. And it was horrible, Rory, because I knew she was dead.
Yeah.
I knew she was dead, and I knew there was nothing else I was going to be able to do for her. But obviously, that's not my call to make.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept working on her. I kept working on her. I kept working on her. And so obviously the ambulance turned up and took her off, and she was pronounced dead. In the ambulance. So then obviously we went down to the hospital for continuity of evidence and everything like that. And I had to then go and give the death message to the parents.
Wow.
And you know what, everything else that's happened to me over the years, from being the little 7-year-old all the way through to that day, that is single-handedly the worst thing that's ever happened to me. That's the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, and that's including Gibraltar. That's including Northern Ireland. That was single-handedly that killed me. And in fact, actually, do you know what, I say that because it nigh on did kill me later on in years. And there was no debrief of that because I got back to the Nick. I got back to the police station after I'd sort of been in the hospital and delivered the message and whatever else. But by the time I got back, my shift had finished.
Yeah.
So and it was the new shift that was on. So and it was our rest days after that. So after that day we had sort of rest days. So there was never any sort of debrief. There was never any sort of mental health assessment because it was just one of them things, where you're a police officer, this is what we deal with, and it's you need to sort of just move on. And I don't think it was anyone's fault as such.
Well, but the systems obviously failed. The system failed, though, in a sense that there should have been systems in place that there's a debrief no matter when your shift ended. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's like since I've seen counsellors and I've seen I've been for different sort of psychotherapies and stuff, and that is so deep rooted inside me now that I can't get rid of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've tried. I have tried.
So that obviously really monumental impact on you. So then did you get? I know you've said obviously you have sought and got support since, but did that all happen? Did you get support then after? Or
said that what happened? We sort of moved back to the northeast. So my wife and I were having my son, who was obviously now coming up 18.
Yeah.
So we had my son, and then we wanted to come back to the northeast. So we moved back to the northeast, and I set up my own little business. Well, I was actually a talent scout for Middlesbrough Football Club, so I was going out and sort of finding like local talent, putting them into sort of the academy and stuff like that. It was a good job. I enjoyed that. But then I got offered a job with a pharmaceutical company, and I went there. I went in just as a temp at first, and then I sort of did really, really well. I got offered a permanent job sort of fairly quickly, a lot quicker than normally happens. So I was flying. I was doing really, really well. And then I just remember there was one day I was on my way to work. I was for a night shift, and I can see it now. I know exactly where I was. I could take to the exact spot. And on my way to work, I just got this overwhelming desire, just a really, really strong emotional desire to put my car off the road and off this cliff. And I was like, I just didn't understand it. I didn't know, could not understand it at all. And I was bursting into tears, and I was driving to work. I'm thinking, what the hell's wrong with me? I got to work, I sat in that car park, and I cried and cried and cried. And my boss come up, and he said, look, what's wrong? I said, honestly, I don't know. I said, I have no idea. He said, look, you can't come to work in that state. And I told him about the fact, that I wanted to put my car over the tops, and he just said, look, he said, you're not in a fit state to be at work. You need to go home. So he sent me home. and thinking about it now, you know, he was without doubt just looking after me, you know. But I just told him that I wanted to put my car over the edge, and he suggested that I drive home. And again, you know, this sort of, but that sort of comes on to the reason why I sort of do the mental health training. But yeah, you know, and again, over the coming months and over the coming, you know,
hold on, so hold on, just stop you there, Tommy. So once again, you didn't get support. So literally, you went home then.
I just drove home, yeah.
And you didn't contact your GP or do anything, or
no,
or nobody contacted, right? Okay, so okay, so but then, so over the coming months, then you're saying.
Over the coming months, I just I really started going downhill, fighting, drinking a lot, like bad, like every weekend. And I started, you know, I was getting arrested. It wasn't a good time. And you know, I was going into work. I remember going to work and I had black eyes and I had burst noses, and I was going into work, you know, where I'd driven to have a night out, and then I'd just sleep in my car and then go to work the next day. You know, I was filthy. You know, where I'd been having a roll around with someone, and my jeans were filthy, muddy, and I was just a mess. I was just an absolute mess. But I couldn't see it.
Yeah,
I couldn't see it, and I was just, you know, my poor wife and my kids seen all of it. You know, and the company did try to help. I couldn't see it at the time. I thought they were just, you know, out to get me at the time. But in hindsight, I can now see that, you know, that they were trying to help me. But the one thing that they did do eventually I ended up losing my job because I had more time off, and you know, I was turning in to work and I wasn't fit for work, and you know, whatever else. Eventually I ended up losing my job for it. But what they did do, they said, look, go and speak to the guys at Help for Heroes, and go and see what, and, you know, because we think you need some help.
Great, right.
So I went to Help for Heroes, and sure enough, yeah, I was, you know.
So what did Help for Heroes provide then? Just, was it a sense of community, or was there a counselling offer?
No. I mean, it had to be more. It had to be more than that, because I was genuinely, you know, like, the one thing that I've missed out in that whole thing, you know, is the fact that suicide was playing a big part. I just wanted to die. I couldn't see any other way out. Yeah. You know, this my wife was constantly worried. You know, she locked me in the house before, you know, because she was worried about me sort of going out and doing whatever, you know, and sort of taking my own life. And you know, she was genuinely worried. And a lot of my friends and people who sort of friends and loved ones and whatever else, you know, genuinely thought, and they were just waiting for the phone call that I'd done it.
So then what support what did you get from Help for Heroes, which?
So I went and spoke to one of their counsellors, and I got some counselling through them. And what they did, they put me in to see a psychiatrist.
Right.
And I went through my whole story, as I have with you guys. And he diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder, so PTSD.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't tell you how much relief I got from just being diagnosed. And the reason I felt so relieved was because it was at that point I realized I wasn't a horrible person. I wasn't just this horrible, nasty, just want to go out and fight and get drunk. And I wasn't, there was a reason behind it.
There's an explanation.
There was, you know, and because for a long time, you know, I was just like, well, this is just me, you know, I'm turning into my real dad. Yeah. And that frightened me more than anything about turning into him. You know, and I hope he sees this video, and I hope he understands that he was a catalyst for a lot what's gone on, and not just for me, but my brothers and sisters. Yeah. And he, you know, and so when I got that diagnosis, I you know, that was kind of sort of the point where I thought, right, okay, there's a genuine reason behind this. The problem is, you know, I always use an analogy now when I'm doing sort of mental health training. When I speak to people who are suffering with mental health, you've got to hit rock bottom. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but you've got to hit rock bottom, because the thing, if you take an analogy of being in a swimming pool, if you hit rock bottom, if you hit the bottom of the pool, you can push yourself up. But if you're sitting in that middle distance between the top and the bottom, you've got nothing to push off.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, actually. Yeah,
you've got nothing to push off. So you need to hit rock bottom. You need to hit the bottom of the pool, to be able to push yourself up. and give yourself leverage so that you can then start, you can start getting better. But the one thing you've got to do first, you've got to forgive yourself. You've got to forgive yourself for what happened to me in Gibraltar. I've got to forgive myself, for everything else that I've done. Like I say, and I was able to do that once I got my diagnosis. I don't think, had I not got my diagnosis, I genuinely, I don't even think I'd be here now. I definitely don't think I'd be here now.
Well, we're obviously delighted that you are still here, Tommy, and obviously you got the support that you needed. So then, so then how did that? So moving a bit further forward, then, so Sporting Force, then.
Yeah.
So how did that come about then in terms of and your mental health training stuff and whatever? And
yeah, so when I went and got support from Help for Heroes, I went on one of their courses called the Pathfinder course. And it's genuinely the one thing that saved my life, because alongside my family, but during the Pathfinder course, I'd lost my job. I was on benefits at that point, and they said, look, you need to find something that makes you tick, something that gets you out of bed on the morning, makes you happy and focus. And I thought, well, do you know what? I like my sport. I like helping people. I get a real buzz out of watching someone else grow off the back of me helping them, if that makes sense. And it's almost selfish because, but I get a real buzz off watching someone else develop from something I've
I don't think that's selfish.
Yeah, and so I come up with the idea and thought, well, can we get veterans into sports clubs? Can we get the football clubs to sort of buy into an ethos of employing veterans and everything like that? So so because I was doing the stuff with Middlesbrough, that was my first club. So even when I was dealing with Help for Heroes, there was one particular person, I won't name any names, of course, but there was one particular person who, when I told her about the idea, she was like, you're not going to be able to do that. That's too big. You cannot do that. There's no way that you can do that. And I thought, I'm sick to death of people telling me what I can and can't do. And I'm sick to death of things being taken from me that weren't my fault. That wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what? Actually, sod you. I am going to do this. And, and sort of 9 years on now, 9 years on now, we've got access to every football club in the country. We help thousands and thousands and thousands of veterans every single year and their families. So, so that little thing that she said to me, albeit she didn't mean it to be reverse psychology, it definitely was, and it definitely worked. So,
give you the incentive to show.
It did. Yeah. You know what? Because I had a new fire in my belly, because of, like, I've just had knock after. I feel like I've had knock after knock after knock, and this isn't me sort of becoming a martyr, and this isn't me sort of, looking for sympathy, because I don't want sympathy. It's not what I'm after. It doesn't help me. It doesn't make me, it doesn't help me at all. So, yeah, but from her sort of saying that just gave me a bit of fire in my belly. And I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to do this. So yeah, so like I say, so we help get ex-servicemen and women into work and into training and the fun side of things what sport can offer. Through professional sport. So
is it all professional sports, or is it football or rugby? Or...
No, it's all. So it started off as football, but it's all professional sports now. So we work with rugby clubs, we work with cricket clubs, we work with tennis. It could be tiddlywinks. It doesn't matter what sport it is, as long as they're willing to sort of give these guys a chance. Then that we'll work with them. So
it's all veterans.
It's all veterans at the minute. So veterans and their families, because I know my wife and my kids, they were a big part of my recovery, and if it hadn't have been for them, I probably would have. Well, again, I wouldn't be here now. But so we say it's very, very important that we look after the family as well. We look after the family as a unit. So but yeah, so we're soon going to be breaking into working with the blue light services, because obviously my connection there.
Yeah.
And so looking at the doctors and the nurses, especially off the back of COVID and and everything that those guys have done for the country as well. So they deserve a bit of help too.
So just for those who are listening, so MQ, the mental health charity, have a book coming out. I think, Craig, when's the book coming out?
Roughly around the week of Mental Health Week in May. So
it's in May of next year, and Tommy, your story is included in the book, isn't that right?
Yes, that's right.
So I'm looking forward to reading that. I think I've done some bits for that book as well, so I'm keen. Really, it looks like a fantastic book. Now, Craig, I've also forgotten what's it called. Or Tommy, do you know what it's called? The book?
There is no name at the moment, but
there's no name. Is there like a running title, or are you allowed to say?
No,
maybe you're not allowed to
not
say.
just yet.
Okay.
We're keeping the mystery at the moment.
Keep the mystery. Well, on that note then, Craig.
So, Tommy, what's your idea of the future of mental health research?
I think it's to get a better understanding of what's actually going on. You know, and the thing is, you know, we can look at mental health from a sort of a couple of different perspectives. I think it's very, very helpful getting someone with lived experience. I think that needs to be part of it, because, you know, all too often, you know, and I don't just mean mental health, but I mean across, you know, all sectors, and, you know, all research across every sort of thing you can think of. You know, is a lot of the time you've got people who have got qualifications in research and qualifications and looking at things, but in actual fact, what it says in the book isn't necessarily sort of how things are. So I think for me, it's important to get the lived experience. It's important to get the perspective of someone who sort of, you know, who's gone through it. As far as the research, like I say, you know, there's a number of different things, you know, that I've found sort of interesting, you know, around so around, you know, like women when they have sort of the monthly cycles. You know, that I've noticed, we've done a little bit of research ourselves, you know, in the charity in Sport and Force, and that actually a lot of the time, you know, with sort of PMT and stuff like that, guys are going through the similar thing. So it's almost like they're cycling with their partners. I know it's not, you know, not the physical signs, but you know, so it's just sort of understanding what it looks like from a family perspective. I think it's about yeah, I'm not sure if I've answered your question very well there, but I think, you know, it's I think that the other problem as well is that in this country, our doctors and our you know, and our sort of specialists, they don't get the time to be able to sort of work through with someone. So a lot of the time now, what they do is they say, look, take these antidepressants, and antidepressants are great, but they're not supposed to be a long-term fix. That's not what they're there for. They're supposed to be a short-term fix to get you to the point where you then go and take professional help. But actually, a lot of the time, you know, they just don't get the doctors and they just don't get the time to be able to sort of work with people. So, in actual fact, people end up getting misdiagnosed. They end up not getting the treatment that's appropriate for what it is that they need. So, yeah, I think that's the big thing for me.
Yeah, it's a great answer.
Yeah, really good answer. I think the highlighting the importance, obviously, of lived experience. I think that's, I mean, in the mental health research field, and that's been a huge development in recent years, is really that having people lived experience involved at all levels of co-design of research, implementation of research, and moving forward leadership of research. So I think that's a really, really vital point. Well, Tommy, we've gone through a lot of pretty tough, heavy stuff, but really, I suppose a really uplifting end point, obviously, is the charity work that with Sporting Force. But I want to sort of bring it to sort of our conversation to an end with, Craig and I try and have two sort of more, not quite lighthearted, but a bit slightly different questions. So I'm going to throw those two questions at you, if that's okay. So, and again, it's just what comes into your head. Don't overthink the questions. So,
yeah.
But actually, maybe take then what the first one. The first one is so obviously you've had a number of different careers, but in sort of your maybe a wish list, if you had another life or whatever, or what other career would you thought you would have liked to do? And you can't say footballer, obviously, because you're a semi-professional footballer, from what I can gather. So,
yeah.
But
I think, God, if I was given the choice, I think possibly a PE teacher. Yeah, quite. Don't let this chubby facade, you know, don't let this fool you. You know, I do know a little bit about sport, but yeah, I think, you know, possibly a PE teacher. I think possibly. Like I say, I would have said police officer. And if I had to go back to any job, it would be of all of the ones that I've had, I think it would be police. But yeah, I think for me it would be a PE teacher. I think.
Yeah, and inspire the next generation of athletes.
Yeah,
hopefully.
exactly.
And then maybe the last one is, so you've just said you're 40. So thinking back over the last 34 years, what advice, obviously you've been on one heck of a journey. What advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
Oh, God, I don't know how long we've got here, but I think, you know, it's be sure in the decisions that you're making. You know, sort of go with what makes you happy. Now, a lot of people chase money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had money. I've been on the bones of my backside now, you know, and everything in between. And I think the one thing that I would say now, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done was done what makes me happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing. Because, you know, money certainly doesn't, you know, it can buy you immaterial things. It can buy, you know, it can buy experiences and stuff like that. But the rock bottom of it all,
Mhm.
the one thing for me now is my family and being happy without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. I mean, because I think I suppose one of the things when I remember when I became a parent first, and that was what I hoped I would try and do instill in my children is happiness is the most important thing.
It is.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't buy that. But before we finish, very finally, I think that was the first mention of bones on your backside in the podcast series so far. I don't think I've had that term. I don't think I've heard that term.
I've never heard that term either.
Right.
I'm going to use it now for.
It's a great term. Okay, one last word to you, Tommy. If people want to support the charity Sporting Force, what can people do?
Yeah. So you can go on to, you can get us on all our social media links, your Facebook and Twitter and and all the usual ones. And if they want to come and support us, we always need volunteers to come and get involved with the different things that we're doing. And obviously, we being a charity, the financial things always hard. So if you go on to our website, which is www.sportingforce.org, or go and catch us up on the social media platforms.
Okay, well, thanks, Tommy, for taking the time to join Craig and I today. I think and really, really fantastic work that you're doing and with the charity, and one heck of a story. So thanks for sharing it, and hopefully it'll help others who've experienced similar things to yourself to hopefully get the support that they so badly need. And it's all about building or breaking down barriers and challenging stigma. So huge thanks from the team at MQ here. So thanks a million, Tommy.
I think, thank you for having me. I think if I was going to finish on one thing, certainly around sort of sexual assault in men is not something that is spoken about. It's not something, and if it's happened to people, genuinely get it off your chest, speak to someone about it, because it's a hard subject, and it's not one that's often spoken about with men. So please go and get the support that you need.
No, thanks, Tommy. And actually, on that note, just for those listening, is that we'll post some links to support charities and agencies for really difficult issues raised today. So thanks very much. That was a tough listen, but hopefully an important listen. So thanks on behalf of Craig and I again, Tommy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.